Good evening, TP701 students. I hope you are all well, and I hope you are all gradually settling into the program. Welcome to Unit 3 of TP701 with the title Lesson Planning. So I have decided to do a pre-recorded presentation for this unit. First of all, I know we are going to have a live session for the session. So I'm going to do 3 different recordings for this unit. Lesson planning is a huge component of this model, and is a content, or is a unit with a lot of content to be covered. So I've decided to split it into 3 just to make sure that the recording doesn't go too well, but I crave your indulgence. Should it go a little bit longer than planned, please bear with me and be patient and listen. This might not be the greatest of all recordings. If you didn't hear me clearly on anything, please feel free to drop me an email to provide more clarity. Okay, so this is part 1 of the 3 parts of Unit 3, which you're going to watch. So let's get going. We hope that at the end of this session that you will be able to you would have achieved the following objectives. I'm not going to read them one after the other, but the core of it is that by the time we have finished with this unit, you will be able to plan your own lessons and deliver grade and phase appropriate lessons, that you will understand the concept of Bloom's taxonomy. You will understand the different phases of a lesson plan. There are 3 of them, that you will be able to use the Stadio generic lesson plan template to plan your lessons, and you will be able to explain constructive alignment. And the last but not the least, that you will be able to complete assignment 1 successfully. The prescribed textbook which we are using for the model is Help, I Am a Student Teacher. I'm aware that some of you have received yours through Wisebook. Please note that lesson planning is in chapter 9 of the textbook. I'll encourage you to read this unit thoroughly. Okay. So what is lesson planning? I've received lots of email from students, on the assignment 1, on what you have to do or what you don't have to do. I'm going to use the simile of lesson planning being like a vehicle that supports learners on their learning journey to reach a predetermined destination. So planning a lesson, or lesson planning, is like teaching a lesson, not planning a lesson. Teaching a lesson is like embarking on a journey. So you want to get to Johannesburg. You need to think about which means of transportation are you going to use to get to Johannesburg. You need to consider how many days you're going to spend in Johannesburg. You need to consider what type of accommodation are you going to be staying. Are you going to stay in a hotel, in a Airbnb, or are you going to stay with friends? All of this you need to put into consideration. The whole idea is that you intend to have a seamless, stress-free and trouble-free journey, the same as planning a lesson. So if you want to take learners to a particular destination, which could be a topic, you have to think about which context are you going to be teaching. You need to think about how much time you have to cover that topic. You need to think about what resources are available for that lesson. You need to think about what type of learners do you have in the classroom. So with this information, then you decide how much information to include. You decide, how much time you have to say. Okay, so if you look at the 3 vehicles there, for instance, each component of the vehicle is working together to make the vehicle functional. That's the way lesson planning is. If you don't think about the different components, that makes a lesson successful, the context, the content, the resources, and all of that, then you're bound to have a lesson that is not so good, that didn't go so well. You need to also make sure that you plan your lesson before you teach. It's of utmost important. So if you are thinking of going to Johannesburg, for instance, and you've decided you're going to travel on the road, depending on the purpose of your traveling, then you decide out of these three cars, which one am I going to use? You obviously don't want to use this truck if you want to get to Johannesburg tomorrow morning because of the time. You don't have the time to use a truck to get to Johannesburg. You rather use one of the speed cars, maybe the ones towards, my left, okay, because you feel it will get there quicker. But if you are going to convey goods, and if you're going to convey goods, then you might consider using the truck. But obviously, you would have much more time to spend on the way. So all of these things, are ways we could just in a bit tell you what lesson planning is. There is a content, there is a concept that you want learners to know. So you need to think about how best to explain that content. Why is lesson planning important? For you to be able to interact successfully, and have a good lesson at the end of the day, you need to be able to be committed to it. It's part of your commitment as a teacher that you have to plan your lesson and that you have to be organized. You need to think about the content you're going to teach. If you don't have the content knowledge, which planning will also help you with. So if you look at that, you're going to teach about energy and change, for instance, and you suddenly discover that there are concepts you don't understand, on that topic, you have to go back and think and read more and find the right textbooks and right resources for it. You need to think about the context. We talked about roles and competencies of a teacher last week in Unit 2, and we said the context you are could make or mar your lessons. You could be in a context where you won't be able to complete your lesson effectively and successfully because it's just where the school is located. It's just the type of resources that are available in that context. It's the type of learners, So lesson planning helps you to put into consideration all of the above before you are able to teach the content. You could either finish your lesson with a sigh, so, disaster, almost from the start. Or you could say, it seems so promising during the 45 seconds I spent planning, but then what happened in the actual lesson? So you could come up with this sad face at the end of each of your lesson, or you could come up with a yay. It all depends on, the amount of effort you've put in planning and the context and the content and all of that. And that's why you plan. You check what amount of resources are available. Would the resources be the best for this particular topic I'm going to teach? I hope this has given you some form of information about why we plan lessons. Let's look at the values of effective lesson planning. I know the assignment you were given, you asked to write 1.5 page essay on the values of lesson planning. Please do not copy some of this information word to word. I'm warning you now, please. I'm letting you know that we are aware that some of you may want to copy this. Do your own research, look up the internet. That's why it's an assignment, okay? So values of effective lesson planning, it gives the teacher, which is you, as it gives you confidence, as you will be able to know what you have to do in that lesson. It enables you create opportunities for interaction in the classroom. It also enables you, create opportunities for learners to achieve the learning objectives and be able to complete assessment and that you'll be able to assess them. It helps you to manage constraints. For instance, if there are little or no resources in the classroom, you take that into consideration while you are planning. It helps you to promote good time management. In your planning, obviously, you will be able to indicate that you are going to have 1 hour for this lesson or 45 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on the school where you are. Okay. and also gives you opportunity to be flexible. You know how you're going to manage the classroom situation. It enables the teacher to keep learners interested through purposeful teaching. So if you plan your lesson very well, you're able to keep learners interested and focused throughout the lesson. Okay. It also helps you to build in opportunities for scaffolding. So the teacher will be able to scaffold knowledge, to be able to scaffold learners, taking them from where they are to the next level. Okay. Through some simple activities and tasks, and provide them with step-by-step support. So lesson planning is a very key aspect of teaching and learning, which should never be taken for granted. I know in school, it might not be as detailed as we are teaching it here, but you need to be aware of lesson planning in some schools anyway. This is a core requirement for Department of Education, which we all have to adhere to. So these are some of the values of lesson planning, and there are a lot more. In terms of structure, the lesson plan have three broad phases. Okay, you have your pre-interactive phase, you have your interactive phase, and you have your post-interactive phase. Your pre-interactive phase is the planning. Yeah, every lesson you have to teach, you have to plan it. So in that pre-interactive phase, that's where you use a particular lesson plan template, like we have the Stadio lesson plan template, to put in the written information, the CAPS page number, the duration of the lesson. You put in information, the topic, the concept you're going to teach, and all of that. Okay, you think about things like the formulation of lesson objectives or learning objectives. You think about prior knowledge, what learners know about the topic, the core content you're going to cover. You also put into consideration the lesson introduction, development, and conclusion. You think about the type of resources. So all of these are the things, you do in the pre-interactive. That is the planning phase. Then you have your interactive phase. So this is the structure of a lesson now, lesson as a whole, not just the lesson plan, okay? Then the interactive phase is where you do the lesson presentation. So you obviously have your lesson introduction, your lesson development, and your lesson conclusion. Okay, so your introduction, you have to make it interesting, you have to make it engaging, and you give learners that wow, expectation, what more is going to come, that wow feeling in the lesson. All right. Then you have your development where you unpack the core content or concepts you were thinking of teaching for that lesson. Then you have your post-interactive phase. The post-interactive phase is where you now reflect on the lesson you have taught. Is where you conclude and reflect on the lesson you have taught. Okay, you think about the challenges you experience in the lesson. You think about the successes you experience, and how to build on those successes. Where you experience challenges, you think around how to change, or what changes you have to make for the future. Okay, so you'll find this information in page 199 of the textbook. Help I'm a student teacher. All right, so this was adapted from here. So these are the three main phases of a lesson, and I will talk more on them in subsequent slides. So under the pre-interactive phase, which is the planning, like I've indicated before, this is where you include all the information you want to teach in the lesson. So your written information is is the first page of the lesson plan template you have, where you've got your name, the name of the school, the content area or the concept you're going to teach. You have the duration of the lesson, the CAPS page number, and all of that. All this you need to provide, on the template. Then the selection of the topic happen here also. You think about the content area, the time I've talked about that. Formulation of lesson objectives or learning objectives. I will talk about how to formulate learning objective in the next part of this presentation. Okay, and then you think about the classroom context, the prior knowledge. Every topic you're going to teach, learners already have an idea of that topic or that concept. This could be that they have gained this knowledge through the previous grade. Okay, so it may be a topic that was introduced if you're teaching grade 8, for instance. So the topic may have been introduced in grade 7. If you're teaching in the FET, it could be that they have experienced this topic, but in a lower grade, in grade 8, grade 9, or grade 7. Okay. And then this is also where you put the core contents, or the activities that are going to be covered in the lesson. All right. So learners obviously know something. It could also be from the environment. We talk about constructivism, for instance, where learning happens in social environment or in social context. So this could be that learners learn from their family about the topic. If you talk about bullying, for instance, learners get bullied outside the school environment also. For instance, peer pressure, they are pressured sometimes by their friends outside the school and all of that. There is something obviously learners know about the topic. So you have to capture that under your prior knowledge. Okay. And you think about the different teaching approaches. How are you going to introduce the lesson? What you are going to include, the resource you're going to use for the introduction, the development, and then the lesson conclusion. Okay. So all of this goes into the pre-interactive phase of the lesson. So it's basically the lesson plan itself, if I could summarize it as that. Then besides the pre-interactive phase, like I have indicated before, these are the things that goes in under the routine information under the pre-interactive phase, sorry. Before you plan, obviously, you have to think about the CAPS document. We have asked you guys to plan your assignment 1 lesson using the CAPS or life orientation curriculum document. So you need to be able to sieve out information from the CAPS document. Is a very important, skill you guys need to develop as students, teachers, okay, and as teachers to be. You need to be able to identify the concept you're going to teach, find out where it's located in the CAPS document, and be able to think your lesson objectives in line with the objectives of that subject in the CAPS document. Okay. You need to understand the structure of CAPS document for all the phases. Okay. If you are teaching in the SP phase, you need to understand the structure of CAPS document in the SP phase. The topics are the same, but the content or concept area changes, and progressively moves upward from grade to grade. If they are teaching about forces, for instance, it's slightly different from how forces are taught, in the senior phase. It differs from how it's taught in the FET phase. Okay. Slightly different. It moves progressively higher up as you move from one phase to another phase, or from one grade to another grade. Okay. You need to look at the overview of topics, look at the specific aims of the curriculum, and be able to link your own learning objectives for that lesson, to the specific aims of the curriculum. Okay. You need to be able to interpret the annual teaching plan, which breaks down topics and concepts into, 4 different terms, and be able to figure out what lesson you're going to do. So when you plan for the purpose of the program we're doing, you plan for a single lesson. So a single lesson will be 1 hour. So you need to think about how much information you're going to cover in 1 hour. Okay. Then you need to be able to find information from the textbook. First of all, you need to be able to identify the textbooks you're going to use for the lesson. Okay, this is a prerequisite which you must be able to do. You must be able to adhere to find a textbook, Also subjects normally have teacher's guide and learner's guide. Be able to sieve out information from the teacher's guide, which will provide you information on what to cover, how much you need to include in a lesson, and how far you have to go. Okay. So once you've selected the topic and the concept area for your subject and your grade, then you need to find the relevant textbook that you're going to use to teach that lesson. Okay, the textbook will now explain to you the quantity or quality of information or content that you have to cover for that particular topic. The teacher's guide will assist you to choose the type of teaching strategy, that is the methods you are going to use, the resources, and it also specified the volume of content for the specific time. So all of these are the things you will be able to gather from the textbook and from the teacher's guide and all of that. So being able to find the relevant textbooks are in different libraries in the community. Also, you'll find textbooks in your school library. If you're already teaching or if you're going for practicals, you also find textbooks in the library at the school where you are where you are going to complete your prac. Okay. You can also add more information by searching in the internet, but we want you to be able to get information from the textbook. Yes, you could get information, for instance, for any topic about in the internet, sorry. But then the way the information has been covered, it could be too high for the grade you want to teach, for instance, or it could be too wide for the grade you want to teach. But the good thing about textbook is sieve this information in a way that you are able to select them and cover them in line with the amount of time you have. It also think about the grades and all of that. So that's the good thing about using textbooks, recommended textbook for each grade. Okay. So yes, you can use information from the internet, but then you must make sure that is properly sequenced and is in line with what is in the textbook and what is available or what is required for that grade. Okay. Right. I have stated information on the internet for your topic might be too vast, so it's important that you select information from the textbook because it narrows the information down to the grade. Right. So when you begin your lesson plan, you would have made sure that you know the topic you're going to teach, the concept, the content area, the time allocated for that. All of this information you need to have at the back of your mind before you think about the topic. You need to figure out from the textbook, the concept, the content area, and you need to be able to take down notes. And so this is the type of activity you're going to do. For instance, you're going to use questioning, or you're going to use group activity, which is part of collaborative learning, or you're going to use or you're going to use whole class discussion, for instance, or any other of the teaching methods to cover the topic. It's very important that you read the information in the textbook. Okay, so become very familiar with the content. If you're not familiar with the content, you're going to struggle with a number of things in the classroom. Okay, the more you read, the more you understand the content. It's important. Right. So when you have sift this information and put the lesson plan together, put the topic and all of that, you need to think about a very important aspect of the lesson. How are you going to assess what you have taught? Okay, so you cannot design a lesson on photosynthesis, for instance, and then you give learners questions on, say, on forces. You get what I mean? So the topic you have given your lesson on must be in line with the assessment, and the content also which you have provided must be in line with the topic. So you cannot have one topic, you teach different content, you assess different one. No. So there has to be what we regard as constructive alignment. Constructive alignment means that your content, the learning objectives, some will call it learning outcomes, and your teaching and learning activities or concepts or content you're going to teach speak to each other. So you can see the way this model that I'm showing here, links to each other. Okay, so the intended learning objectives, what the student will be able to do at the end of the lesson, must be in line, with the teaching and learning activities you're going to cover for them to be able to achieve those objectives. And then when you do your assessment, they must speak to the learning objectives. They must speak to the content you have covered. So if you teach a different thing and you assess a different thing, then there is no alignment between the three. Then we are going to ask you a question. How come you are assessing this when you have taught that? Hope I've made that point clear. So constructive alignment is key in every lesson you teach. All right. I've tried to keep this thing within a certain amount of time. I hope I managed to do that. Watch out for part 2 of this presentation, where I will go further to discuss other phases of lesson planning. Thank you very much. And if you didn't hear me on a particular thing, or if you feel that you still didn't understand after listening to the recording, please feel free to email me or the lecturer in charge of your group, or any of the lecturers for now, because we're still sorting out the groups. Thank you. I'll see you just now in part 2.